Hello, everyone, and welcome to this GWAR Final Podcast, the podcast where we talk about various subjects like changes in America. In this particular episode, I want to look at the Catholic perspective of it. Specifically, how has Catholicism affected America and Bakersfield in particular? It's one thing to talk about, how Catholicism how it got here and where it's at right now. But it's another thing to kind of figure out what it does in Bakersfield, specifically since I live here. And it's not that it's easier to get perspective here, but it's like it feels more relatable to me to get perspectives from a small, big town like Bakersfield rather than going to somewhere like Fresno, where I found a lot of my research seemed to be kind of pointing me towards, like, I go to the Beale Memorial Library and I try to find maybe an article about Catholicism, like a priest here or something like that. And a lot of their sources would point to Fresno or San Francisco. So today's podcast, I interviewed three people to kind of give me a perspective on how Catholicism impacted the U.S. in general, but more specifically how Catholicism impacted Bakersfield. I interviewed the pastor over at St. Francis Church, Reverend Dr. Theophane Anthony. And I also have my partner, Marivi Higuera, and her mother, who are going to give me perspectives. I interviewed my girlfriend because she is a former believer and used to go to the St. Francis Church as a kid. So it'd be very interesting to get her perspective because not only is she not religious, but she's also very respectful towards it, to the point where when we went over there to try to get interviews with said priest, there was a lot of reverence to the space as we walked in there. So that was something interesting because usually with former religious people, especially myself, we would kind of walk into those spaces and just kind of be like, oh, it was a thing that happened. Or in some extreme cases, it's, the worst place that you could possibly get into. Like, this is horrible. It's a form of exposure therapy. But, like I said, my girlfriend doesn't really have it that way. So that would be very interesting. Her mother. Why did I interview her mother? Well, she is still a member. She still, goes to church from time to time. And, it's very good to kind of get that perspective too. What's it like for an everyday, congressional member to, be in that kind of space? So with all of that, hopefully we can get down to the nitty gritty as to how we even got here in the first place. During the Revolutionary War in the U.S., colonial America, the Catholics were very few in number and they had very little to no influence, according to the Catholics. No, sorry, this was Catholics in Colonial Days by Thomas P. Phelan. He basically wrote that the Toleration Act of 1689 gave no relief to the Catholics either in England or America. See, John Locke argued that the papists already have a low tolerance for people who break their rules, so it was only fair that the U.S. should oblige those tenets of, intolerance, of not believing in the Trinity, basically. Then later on, there was a new queen. So why am I bringing up a queen? Why am I bringing up England? Well, America, was founded in England a little bit. And as we know, in England, they don't really have a good relationship with the Catholic Church. It dates all the way back to Henry VIII. Queen Anne, when she took power, during the declaration of Queen Anne in 1702, all the officials were obliged to take the test oath, which was basically saying that they are fully loyal to the crown and the Church of England, and they disavow any papal or papist views and practices. It went on in 1704. She made an act forbidding the Catholics from practicing their religion in said country, and even encouraged the children to rebel against their family, as this is very lackluster, this isn't getting us anywhere. So that all of that happened. But the U.S. being the United States, we don't really don't really listen well when it comes to intolerance. The United States believed in religious freedom, so they stuck to it. And despite all of these, rules, despite all these bans, during my research, I noticed that there was a Reverend John Carroll who wrote to one of his associates, trying to talk about how the work has reached the Americas. If I can find that, let's see. It shouldn't take too long. It should be right at my desk. But basically, what happened was, so the Catholic population, Catholics in colonial days, by a Reverend Thomas P. Phelan. In 1785, Reverend John Carroll, writing to Cardinal Antonelli, gave a relation of the state of religion in the new republic. There are in Maryland about 15,800 Catholics, and about 9,000 are free men. Children, about 3,000. And about that number of the slaves, there are about 7,000 of them. There are no more than 200 in Virginia who are visited 4 or 5 times a year by a priest. In the state of New York, I hear there are at least 1,500 people. As to Catholics who are in the territory bordering the river called Mississippi, contains, I hear, many Catholics, formerly Canadian, who speak French, and I fear are destitute of priests. He goes on, that in 1784, it was reported that the total number of Catholics living in the 13 colonies was 32,500 people. The 4 more southern states had about 2,500 people. New England, but 600. New York and New Jersey collectively about 1,700. Maryland, 1,200. Slaves, 8,000. Pennsylvania and Delaware, lands of toleration, 7,700. The French Catholics settled between the western boundary of the states and the Mississippi were estimated at 12,000 more. And all of this was in 1785. So we can kind of see how, the Catholic faith, the practices, the church, it kind of, it stayed. It didn't go away due to some ban or anything like that. And I found that very interesting, that they, thought it was appropriate to bring that, the doctrine out here, to Bakersfield or to the United States. Because obviously, from 1784 onwards, there was the Great Expansion, the Great Migration, Manifest Destiny. Everybody went to the West. And, around the 1800s, we had a bunch of famous, missionaries that were over here. St. Francis Garces. Francis Garces, who is basically like, I guess, the patron saint of Bakersfield. Even though he's not a saint, but basically they venerate him as such. So I want to turn this over to my first expert, Father Theo, to sort of get his perspective on like what the church is, what the church has done, and what the church plans to do. So basically, the first question that I have here is, what was Bakersfield like when you first got here in St. Francis? What was the scene like?
Yeah, when I first came here, it was COVID time, and basically there was only one service here. We have nearly 7,000 families, but one service, online service, that's pretty much. And COVID time, everyone is going through lots of, stress, mental health issues, fear. There's no socialization, people were like, in quarantine. And in that situation, one thing I understood is, I'm also an adjunct professor of psychology at Bakersfield College. So I knew right away the need for community support. Okay, there must be a support group for our people. So I started service outside of the church, like west side of parking lot, east side of parking lot, by the youth center. We never stopped. COVID could not stop us from anything. We had service, and that really brought this community together. And and after some time we went back to church, but we never stopped. But the whole idea was not only worshiping, to get rid of the fear people had, fear of death, fear of getting sick, uh, fear of germs, all kind of phobia. I mean, it was not just phobia; it was a very realistic also. Some people can get sick, but at the same time, they need to find their center. They need to get connected with something divine, something supernatural, and that's what church provides. And we also did lots of psycho-spiritual interventions to overcome this, phobia, and also all this fear. That really helped many families. We also had counselings here. So I think our church really contributed to the community. Whoever walks in, it's not only Catholics or Christians or agnostics or whoever that be, our doors were wide open to everybody to approach for anything. Also, we have a ministry called Monday Night Ministry. We serve our guests. When I say our guests, they are the homeless brothers and sisters of Bakersfield. We serve somewhere between 150 to 200 people every Monday. Last week we had a couple of weeks ago we had this Thanksgiving dinner, and for Christmas also we'll have a special dinner. But other than that, we have dinner for them every Monday. It's a big ministry here, reaching out to our guests who are our homeless brothers and sisters.
Yeah, that perfectly summed up my next question. Was like, what would you say were the greatest achievements of St. Francis Church? And like you said, everything with the youth centers, the psycho-spiritual interventions, serving food to the homeless. Yeah. What other achievements do you think this has done for Bakersfield as a whole?
Well, for Bakersfield as a whole, we are trying to reach out to the bigger community. When I say bigger community, regardless of the parishioners, we have reached out to the bigger community for their mental health, spiritual nourishment and support, and we are available one-on-one. If anyone wants to talk to us from this county, they often call the office, and this is where they meet. It says, now you didn't know, I didn't know who you are, you don't know who I am, but you just called and you made an appointment. That's what exactly. We are open to everybody. Anyone who wants our service, we are here to support.
Yeah. Okay.
And we have a bunch of other ministries also here. In Baker Street there is something called Vincent Depot. Right across the street here by I Street we have Catholic Charities, and the whole community come together in those two institutions to help and to serve our community. This Thanksgiving, I was serving along with the Catholic Charities. We handed out 1,048 turkeys.
Whoa.
Yeah, when I saw the crowd lining up from I Street to 8th Street to H Street to 10th Street around the block, I said, oh my gosh, we don't have enough. But thank God, it's like a multiplication of bread,
Yeah, yeah.
We had enough at the end of the day. We distributed 1,048 turkeys with the help of, thanks to Catholic Charities, Jeff Negretti, the uh, the chairperson of our ministry here by Bakersfield office. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. So the Friar John J. Crowley, you said that I should talk to Monsignor Frost about
Probably
those.
because
Yeah.
I don't know much about him. I will look up for a second.
Yeah.
Before we go there, this St. Francis Church was built in 1881. Original church was by downtown area, 1881.
Yeah.
A few blocks north of this 10th Street. It was over there from 1881 to 1953. And there was an earthquake that partially, damaged the church at the time. So they moved and built this church in 1953 and moved here. So this has got legacies, history, 5 generations, like some of the all-time petitioners like Anton Giovanni's, Fanukis and Banducci's, and lots of long-time petitioners who migrated to the US from Italy. They were all farmers. Even from Croatia, there are families from Croatia here. Norway, they all did lots of farming in this area. So we have a great history from 1881.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
So the friar, what's the name of the friar?
Yeah,
Let me look up because I'm not.
The friar, his name is John J. Crowley.
John J. Crowley. Crawley.
Yes.
Crowley.
See, I went down to the BO library trying to find out if I can, find anything on him, since he was around Kern County and wrote for Kern County. But unfortunately, the only thing I found, like the very first thing that we pulled out of his file, was the news of his death. Yeah, that was the very first thing, and we were kind of like trying to look like this can't be right. Like I thought, I had a little reference note of something that he, like, not wrote, but he contributed to. And no matter how much we tried to find it, it was just his death, and it was just, and yeah, that was going to be one of my questions, was just like, what was, I could ask, Monsignor Frost about this, but like, what was the reaction to his sudden passing? Because he was known for, driving around trying to get, stuff done for Owen Valley.
Yeah, he was only 49 years old when he died. So he died in 1940. Known as the Desert Padre, was the notable Catholic priest in California's early 20th century, serving areas like Death Valley, but historical records focus on his work in desert regions, not especially Bakersfield, through the Monsignor Frost, I would recommend him because he has all this information, and you'll be surprised at the knowledge he has about this Kent County.
Yeah. But I think that summed it all up. Everything is kind of just very repetitive. Like, oh, what was it like? What's it like today? And you kind of like, he summed it all up. Yeah, it's come a long way since the panic of COVID. I can definitely focus on that aspect of it. But yeah, thank you so much for being a part of this.
You're very welcome.
Bueno, pues mi primera pregunta es, ¿cómo fue la iglesia cuando llegaste aquí en los Estados Unidos? La primera vez cuando estuviste en Bakersfield, ¿cómo fue el San Francisco?
No, pues entonces era más fácil. No era tanto formalidad no tenían que ir los 2 años a misa para hacer la comunión, el bautismo, no tenía que pedir cita uno para todo. Y cuando eran las clases uno podía estar con ellos allá y ahora ya no. Tengo ya varios años que no voy, pero ya no. Nada es igual.
Ah, ok.
Ahora para todo es cita. Quieren 2 años ahora para todo.
¿Y qué, bueno, durante esos años, qué puede decir es un highlight de...
¿Cómo?
A ver, un gran cosa que has visto entre San Francisco? ¿O qué ha hecho la iglesia para usted grande o qué has hecho usted para la iglesia o algo así? ¿Qué fue el gran impacto de la iglesia? Es que es decir.
Pues el bautizo de los chamas de los 3 hijos, la comunión. No estuvo bien.
Bueno, y la última pregunta, pues ya dijiste que hoy todo es cita, todo es organizado. ¿Qué, de los miembros de la iglesia, cómo son ellos antes y hoy?
Pues ahora yo no sé cómo sean, pero antes no todos eran buenos. El hijo el más grande, por eso no quiere nada saber ahora de la iglesia porque lo trataron muy mal.
Ey.
Lo agarraban del cuello y nunca le creían a él, nomás a los americanos. Yo me tuve que pelear varias veces con ellos porque nomás querían castigar a este y al otro no. A él una vez le rompieron la blusa con una tijera y querían castigar al mío nomás porque se defendió. Y le dije, no, los dos son ninguno.
Ey.
Y ahí me estuve y no me dejé hasta que lo hicieron.
Bueno. Pero ahora, bueno, fue muchos años que no asisto, pero ahora no es así, pues más organizado. O...
Yo tengo varios años que no voy, pero pues dicen que ahora son muy estrictos,
son más estrictos.
muy diferentes según.
Bueno, pues muchísimas gracias por esta entrevista y bueno, hasta el próximo. What would you say your experience was like in St. Francis Church when you first got there as a kid? Or like your earliest memory, since you said you were born in it, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
For me, it was, I felt a lot of love. I was in love with the church and I was in love with God. I was in love with everything, the whole thing. For me, it felt like home. It felt like family. It was an experience. Something that I haven't felt in a long time.
You said also that it was very like less gated in the building, because when we walked in there, you noticed there were a lot of gates there.
Yeah, it was less gated before. Also there wasn't like appointments because again this was like in the early 2000s, and everything was a little more different. I felt like revisiting that area. It felt very different, very like something happened for them to had to be gated. Maybe it's it could have just been like it's more convenient. It makes them feel more safer. They can keep the people more safer, which is it's a good thing. But for me, it felt like, oh my God, like it's not that open anymore because they can't. And back then it was more easier, and I myself am not religious anymore, but I wouldn't cause so much disrespect because. The reason why I'm not religious isn't their fault. They didn't do anything. But when I was younger, I was too angry, and I couldn't help but let my emotions take over. And I just decided to retract from church, and because it felt safer to be in my own head and think that what I'm doing was better. But then again, a 12-year-old does not know. But that's been almost 2 decades. And I'm a completely different person. I don't hate him, and I realized that they are not the fault, and they are what they are, and they've always been, and they continue to be everybody's experience that I had when I was little, love.
Yeah, that it wasn't as closed off, it was very open up. So I think that what I was trying to lead into was what would you say would be like a highlight for you? Like what was the most love you've ever felt at one point while you were over there?
I would say very, very early in my life. Before being almost a teenager, I'd say. Because you know how it is, as you're growing, hormones kind of mess with you. But I didn't use it as a crutch. Also, I only fell in love with it because I genuinely believed in everything that was there. And again, my beliefs changed.
I get perfect transition. Like, now, we get to the nows of it. You said you're not as religious, but you would never disrespect a church like that. How would you describe your not being religious? Like, what do you mean by that?
I'm not religious. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in the devil. I don't believe in any of those things. But at the same time, I believe that it could be possible. But I don't believe because I have traumas. I'm still in there because it's not that we fully heal. We have to learn to live with it, and the way that I've been learning to live with that is it's crazy enough, but what was taught, forgive, so it's not that I forgave them, I forgave my younger self. Yeah. And so that helped me to understand that not all religious people are the same, and not all churches are the same. Especially that church, St. Francis. Everybody had their own experience, and then I had mine. And again, I felt a lot of love, and it felt like home. But again, I wouldn't myself personally be a part of it. But I wouldn't mind my children being a part of it because my experience is one thing, it's not theirs.
Yeah. I guess the last question I would have, membership. I notice a lot of things that a lot of these Catholic research, they like to talk about membership, like, oh, there's been an increase here, there hasn't been an increase. Would you say, like, from the last time you went over there, do you think like membership increased, decreased, or kind of stayed the same?
Honestly, I wouldn't know because I haven't gone in years. I would have to ask my family members about that. But I usually don't ask them about that stuff because I usually not thinking about that for a personal reason. It's because I feel like I'm not ready yet to revisit it. Hopefully at some point I will, which I'm trying to baptize my kids, so it might be sooner than I thought. So I might have to actually ask, which getting that insight might be a little bit of a hit to me, because it's gonna hit me like bricks, like a train, but again, I don't know, but from what I've seen when I in passing, it looks like it's still the same, because when I pass in car, it looks like it's still the same. Yeah, it's a lot of people,
Okay.
I don't think there has been a decrease, and if there has, maybe it could have been during the pandemic, because a lot of people had to stay at home.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I could think of. But other than that, I don't think there has been a decrease from what I've seen at a distance.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for your perspective. So with all of these perspectives in mind, what have we learned? Well, I'm learning very much throughout my research that the Catholic Church, when it comes to changes, it's very subtle in membership. There's no reports of like, oh, there's been an increase of Catholics, there's been a decrease of membership. In the church that I grew up in, it was an evangelical Christian church. And one of the things about evangelical Christians is that they love to harp on about how many people received the word of God, basically. And it was very interesting how, the Catholics sort of focus on the charities that they've done and the work that they try to do rather than, oh, I have this many members here or I have this many priests here. So it was very interesting to see that kind of change or not lack of change, but like sort of a steady pace. The Catholic Church isn't rising, it isn't falling. It's exactly where it needs to be, basically. And I can appreciate that. Somebody who's from the outside, we didn't really grow up in this stuff. Like I said, evangelical Christians, they love to, throw pot shots at the Catholics. And they would, they had all these, things about what they do, what they believe, how they believe. And, I go in there and I talk to these people and it's really nothing like that. If anything, I'm the one that had it backwards. Like, it was more everything that my church said that they did. It was basically what the church did. Like us, proselytizing, singing in malls and, preaching door to door or, at a park and stuff like that. Catholics don't really do that. I've noticed. They stick to the church. Any events that they have are at the church, or they're Catholic charities. So say there's like a feeding going on, it's not just going to be at like the rec center. They have it at the St. Francis grounds. So it's very interesting. It kind of follows that biblical verse of Jesus where he basically said that if you're going to pray, if you're going to worship, you got to do it in secret. And those who stand out on the street corners, screaming about the word of God, wanting to be seen, that verily I tell you that is their reward in full. So this research really showed me a lot of things about the history of how religion has helped Bakersfield sort of cope with the disasters that sort of, have happened lately. We see on Kern County activities all the time, the city on fire, car crashes, drunk drivers, and like DUIs are just up on the rise. And it seems that like the goal of the Catholic Church is to kind of comfort the people in that, because one of the stories I took away from it, as you heard, was when Father Theo first got there, it was during COVID. So it was very interesting how they sort of approached the religious psychosis that sort of hit everybody during that time of COVID, where everybody's stuck in their houses and they're left to their own beliefs, their own research. They, kind of just skewed off. But the Catholic Church kind of seems to be, pointing them in the right direction. Not like towards God and like, oh, you're going to get saved, but more like in your heart. Like, so you just feel right. It just feels they're trying to, like, it's a centerpiece, basically. Like, this is like reality, not the church itself, not being in church, but like this is the way the world works. This happens because of this and therefore this. We want to do good in the wood, but we want to do good in the world, but there's a lot of, bad people that will prevent us from doing it. So we got to find other ways to help out. We can convince the people that are stopping us from doing the good of why we need to keep doing the good. And one of the ways that they do that is just by showing them good works, instead of just announcing, hey, I plan on doing this, hey, I plan on doing that. They just do it. So yeah, very interesting. The positivity that I didn't expect to see during this research, because again, a lot of times you hear about the Catholic Church and it's about the messed up dark parts of it.
not just, with the controversial priests, but just the entire history of the Catholic Church in the Americas, and just like what the not what they did, but what happened in the name of the Catholic Church to get the people, to get, I guess, the Aztecs, the Indians down there, to convert to Catholicism. They didn't want to stop worshiping, so they, did what they did. You have the Spanish Inquisition, same thing. Hardcore Catholics wanted to kick out the Islams and any other non-Catholic influences out of there. And, all these things are bad. All these things were atrocious. And, I've further research has shown that the Catholic Church very recently, over the last few years, have been condemning a lot of the acts that they did. A lot of the Catholic Church has now condemned, the conquistadores. They've condemned... I'm not too sure if... I'm going to have to... I didn't get a clear, straight answer as to whether the Catholic Church denounced the Nazi Party now. I know they didn't back in the day. That Pope John Paul II didn't really say anything to them, didn't say anything about them. So it kind of, there's that. But like I said, despite all of this historical stuff, all of these things that I just mentioned, it seems like they're trying to not fix their image. They're trying to just basically show us the truth by living the truth. Because the Catholic Church has, because the Bible itself does have rules against, pedophilia, thievery, overindulging. There's verses for that, all in the Bible. So, it's great to see how, there were some bad apples in there, but they're all being held accountable now. Like I said, now. Maybe not back in the day, like when I believe it was 2009 when all these priests came out in Boston. Yes, it was. In Boston, Massachusetts, when that whole thing came out with the molesting priests, a lot of them were just kind of moved around. They didn't strip them of their priesthood. They didn't really kick them out of they didn't excommunicate them. They just kind of moved them around. They just moved them to a different parish and just left it at that. But, in Bakersfield specifically, they don't really put up with that, because I did hear during my research, interviewing one of the members before I interviewed the father, one of the members were there, and I happened to catch him, asked him a quick question what was it like, and what they told me was that some messed up things did happen, like a priest did try to get all touchy, but they immediately kicked him out. So, as a result, he wasn't just moved around. They didn't keep his titles. He was in jail. They threw him in jail. So it's very interesting to see. And even with my the church that I went to too, it came out that the main leader of the church was a criminal, a pedophile. So he's been arrested, and that priest that did that was also arrested. So I think we're really seeing how not just the Catholic Church, was like in general, religion is trying to sort of clean up their image. They're not allowing this stuff to slide anymore. Like, they're not turning a blind eye towards atrocities that have happened in the name of the Catholic Church. And I really appreciate how, it seems that, they're really cleaning up their image. They're remembering who they are, what they're teaching their members, and for once, they're practicing what they preach. And I really appreciate that. So thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. And I hope this taught you a little thing or two about, what the Catholic scene is like here in Bakersfield. And hopefully, I could probably see you over there casually. Thank you for watching.